and it has not been approved by the council. And I don't know if it has to be. I know that there has to be a public hearing.
Yeah, that hearing was set for April 25th for that business subsidy loan. That they did last council meeting.
Any commentary?
No, my position hasn't changed. You know, I urge you to consider your but-for test in your business subsidy policy, and the goal of that but-for test is to state that when you give a subsidy, but for that subsidy occurring, the project wouldn't occur. And really the goal of that policy is to really minimize the amount of subsidy that the taxpayers have to provide to make a project work, so that you can spread it out to more people and more entities. This is kind of the reverse, where you're trying to approve a subsidy in advance of knowing what the financing would be. So I think it's very difficult to do a but-for analysis. You can deviate from that if you choose to, but I'm hesitant to recommend that you do that and incur expense for a TIF district if there is no commitment for the bulk of the financing that's needed to complete the project. So my position hasn't changed.
I agree. You ought to be able to get a conditional commitment out of Merchants Bank that subject to this happening, this happening, this happening, they will approve the loan. Before we spend any more money here, I would like to see a conditional commitment out of Merchants Bank saying that if these things happen, they will make the loan.
I would agree.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Tom. This is where we are at right now. Mr. Kubani, do you have any comment for us?
Certainly, if it pleases the council. Just a couple of points. First of all, Mr. Chidwell is correct. We're required by law to make a but-for finding whenever we talk about the use of tax increment financing. What the law doesn't say, however, is how that is calculated. It simply says it needs to be documented. So the most loose interpretation of the law is you could have a signed wet napkin at a bar from a developer saying it won't move forward without TIF assistance, and you've met the black and white letter of the law, if not the intent. Certainly that's not what I'm proposing here. But just a cursory review of what's being proposed leads me to believe that it's not out of line that this project should receive assistance, although we can debate how much assistance that should be. If you look at the price that was paid for the land up front, as well as the pending special assessment to be certified against the land, the resulting cost per acre far exceeds what current market conditions have in and around the Rochester area.
But the assessment was going to go away?
Well, and that's...
Well, he hasn't paid for the land yet.
No, but the assessment was going to go away?
I should back up so I don't miss anything. When I was asked to attend an EDA meeting a few months ago, you know, at that time, I guess there's some agreements in place where either the city or the EDA has made an outreach that, you know, you will provide financial assistance as necessary to make the project happen, undefined. And so I felt that my job coming out of that meeting, based on what I was being told, was to try and nail that down. What is that exactly? What will it take? Then there was a bunch of discussion back and forth between myself and Mr. Suri after that meeting, and we came to a few points that I was able to get him to agree to being sort of get. So I brought those back to the EDA, and I'm going to share them with you tonight if you'd like to hear them. And they said, well, okay, we will move to approve recommending that to council with the condition, just like you're asking for a conditional letter. They had asked for a letter from some financing institution indicating that if these provisions are met, they will indeed finance the project and move forward. And of course we don't have that. Now, I have not incurred, let me put it this way, I will not be charging you for any of my time to date. So if you tell me not to proceed tonight, you will not be receiving a bill from myself or our firm, okay? If you decide you wanna proceed, well, then that's a different ball of wax. And in order to meet the timeframes that I had shared with the council in a letter previously, I'd really have to rock and roll. I mean, I'd have to start basically tomorrow on this, so, weigh that as you decide if you wanna move forward or not. I have a couple of handouts, and Kathy, if you'd be so kind, if you'd like to take one and pass that around. The same with this.
Vern has an extra.
I have a couple extras, whoever's interested. Okay, if I could get you to focus on the one that says in the top left, the community center lot assessment. You know, we really have two different projects going on here. One is a community center and one is a motel. And from what I've been able to understand through conversations with staff and perusing the agreement so far, and coming to meetings, there's a lot of connection going on. So in my mind, I tried to separate the two. When it came to the community center, the city would agree to contribute $595,000 towards the cost of that facility. Mr. Suri and his development group would finish it off to some estimated amount of money. I don't know what that was, 150, I don't know what the amount was. In return for that contribution, finishing off the motel, or excuse me, the community center, the motel would be given 20 years worth of use of the motel. Basically consider it an upfront rent by
You
making
mean
that
the community
contribution.
center?
Yeah, the motel would get use of the community center for 20 years. So when they had weddings and so forth. Okay, that sounds reasonable. The community center lot, as you know, being the Himley Business Park, was due to be specially assessed. And the original agreement, or understanding with Mr. Suri, was that the motel